This is Patriots Playbook.
The legend.
What other words can we try to get into the show today? Sucky, sucky, sucky. Would that be a good one today? I don't know. I'm kind of just sort of bamboozled.
That's fair.
Nonplussed.
I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it's true.
You can Google it.
Why they are where
Can
they
you
are.
imagine if Mac had taken 41 seconds? He'd be a grease spot on the highway. I know with this particular audience, you're way smarter than that. I'm smart, Mikey. I'm smart.
Now, here's your host of Patriots Playbook, John Rook.
The only one left of the studio. Everybody's gone to Germany. Sounds like it could be the title of a movie. Evan is actually on his way, or actually there, I guess, by now, right? Because I know he and Maureen went. So Faith is manning the controls today. So when you call into the program, please say hello to Faith. Please be nice to her, because she's doing such an excellent job holding down the fort with me here in Foxborough. The team is actually taking off for Germany tomorrow. And there are some people that went early, because I know that Maureen and Evan and Fred and Paul and Deuce, they're all going to start. They're doing programming starting tomorrow, right, Faith? I believe that's what it is. Yep. So they'll be doing stuff from Germany starting Thursday. So we're going to kind of lead you into the German programming over the course of the next couple of days here today. And coming up on the program, we'll have Zach Cox from Nesson, who is a frequent contributor here in the program, to kind of talk about stuff. And we do have some stuff to talk about again today, which we'll get into very shortly. We'll also be joined by Nate Atkins from the Indianapolis Star to get the Colts perspective on making this trip overseas to play in Frankfurt. And Russell Baxter in hour number 2 on week 10 around the NFL. So all of that is upcoming. But so because Evan is already over in Germany, at least until we talk to Zach, the phones are wide open. And I know sometimes it's a little frustrating to get in, because we start our conversation and Evan and I go back and forth and get into, all kinds of, X and O discussion like Evan likes to do from time to time off the top of the program. So I want to make sure that the first half hour at the very least, and then we'll fit you guys in wherever we can thereafter. But it belongs to you. 855-PATS-500 is the toll-free telephone number today. 855-PATS-500. Web radio at patriots.com. The email, I'm going to read a couple of those coming up. At JR Broadcaster is the X handle. It's been so difficult to get used to not saying Twitter, even though most everybody still calls it Twitter, but it's been difficult to say that. Anyway, my X handle, at JR Broadcaster. My IG handle, it's also at JR Broadcaster. Or you can post on my Facebook page if you got a question. I got to start with, I think, some of the obvious. There are reports, certainly, that came out earlier today, beginning with Ian Rappaport and NFL Network, that cornerback J.C. Jackson, who, as we know, apparently pouted over being taken out of the starting lineup this past Sunday in the loss to the Commanders, and that he is not expected to travel to Frankfurt tomorrow, Thursday, for the game against the Colts on Sunday. If you haven't heard that or seen that on the interwebs today, NFL Network first reported it. We have not, we're not confirming. We're not in the business really of confirming it here, but we just go by on what they've said. And I can't say that the whole thing surprises me. When you take into consideration the apparent sullen attitude that he's had, when you take into consideration B, that the GM for the L.A. Chargers allegedly said, and I saw this on an ESPN report, that he apologized to his defensive backfield group for the Chargers for signing J.C. Jackson in the first place. Wow. I mean, should never have done that. Wow. That ought to tell you something. And I can't imagine for the life of me why a guy who, clearly had some issues playing for the Chargers, and then he gets traded back to New England where he actually had some success, why he's so sullen. I don't get it, especially when the Patriots have a need. When Christian Gonzalez went down, they've got a need. They needed a body. They needed somebody to play. And it was almost like a gift fell to them out of the sky. And he's upset over it? What is he upset? Is he upset over being traded? Is he upset over being, over what's being talked about him? Dude, 2 words. Grow up. I just this confounds me, and this strikes at the very root of the problem with the 2023 New England Patriot football team. There are about 2 guys, maybe 3 guys on this team who are willing to take accountability of themselves. And those are the guys that you see up at the podium in the middle of the week. You see David Andrews, you see Hunter Henry, you see Mac Jones. That's about it. I would add Matthew Slater probably to that group too because of his veteran status and leadership status, although apparently whatever leadership status he has in that locker room is falling on deaf ears. No one's paying attention. And so this tells me, if this story is true, and I have no reason to believe it's not, NFL Network's reporting it, that if JC does not attend this game this weekend, there shouldn't be any surprise that this team is 2-7. It speaks to a larger issue, and I really hate. I'm going to mention it just because it's the first thing you think of. Although I'm not really sure that this is the case, but does the staff have the locker room's attention? Are these guys not listening to Bill? Are they not listening to the coaches on the staff? Have they just given up? I can't believe that to be the case. Can't believe that to be the truth, especially after all the success over a number of years. And I know that rosters changed over. But, guys don't come in here stupid. They don't. Guys come in here knowing exactly what is expected of them. If they don't like it, you know what I say? Tough bleep. This is the way this place operates. Now, you can make an argument that this place doesn't need to operate the way it's always operated over the past, 20-plus years, because I would say times and athletes and the game, they've all changed. They've all changed. But there's just an adult way to do things here that clearly is not being done. And that's the part that gets me. How these guys can cop a tood, I honestly am having a really hard time understanding it. A really hard time getting it. And the only thing I can say is, look, you get what you pay for. And I'm not sure what you've paid for in this instance. And if you're not paying much, well, then you're probably not going to get much. That doesn't do you any good for the remaining 8 games on the schedule, which you have. Which is, there's still, that's half the season basically still to go here. So, I'll at least start with, talking about looking ahead, because frankly, this is the time where you learn who you want to keep. You're down in the foxhole. I don't like to use war analogies because I think they're stupid, but I'm going to use a partial one here because, when times get tough and you're in that quote unquote foxhole with your friend, your buddy, your compatriot, your fellow soldier in arms, whatever it may be, you rely on each other. Do you not? When you have problems, you rely on family, you rely on friends, right? You rely on people who are close to you. In this particular case, you rely on your teammates. And if you don't have this guy next to you that you can rely upon, what do you have? You got zip, zilch, zero. Move on. Your career is just too short-lived in this business to put up with nonsense. These guys are well paid. They're well compensated. I realize that most of them have been, fed pablum their entire lives, told that their, blank doesn't stink and all kinds of stuff, okay? I get that. It's a little different day and age now than it was, say, 20 years ago. But you're still a professional. You're paid like a professional. You need to act like a professional. Now, we're getting one side of the story here, and I'm just sort of estimating that this other stuff has gone on. But we're never going to get the answer to this. Number one, I'm not sure that, the Patriots would ever allow something like that to get out. Number two, I'm not sure JC would ever want to talk about it, and if he did, chances are he's going to sit on the bench. Why? Because we can clearly see when the Patriots misspeak, they go right into Coach Belichick's doghouse, right? Keyshawn Booty? That's what happens. And you know what? Shame on us for not realizing that, because that's been the way it is for 23 years. That's just the way the coach is. Take it or leave it. Now, that's a lot easier to take when you're winning games. When you're not winning games, the semi-pseudo boorish behavior on the part of the coach, because it's the coach's way or the highway, is a lot harder to take, admittedly. That doesn't mean he's going to stop doing it just because what he knows how to do. It's what he's always done. Hey, why should we expect him to change? And maybe that's at the root of the problem. Either A, he doesn't want to, or B, he can't. And this is the decision that the Krafts have to make, between now and whenever, likely the end of the season, over what direction this team is really going. What direction does this team need to take from this point forward? We're past seminal moments. We really are. I mean, like everyone, like other Patriot fans who would be listening to this program, you hope that they somehow find a way to win a couple of games and we can feel better about ourselves and yada, yada, and whatever. And, that starts this week with Indianapolis, and we're going to talk about the game coming up and, what should they be talking about? Who should they be playing? What should we be looking for? I want to look for players who want to be here. I want to look for players who want to succeed. I want to look to players who hate losing. I want to look for players who don't like getting their butts beat. I want to look for players who won't jump off the line of scrimmage or line up in the neutral zone without understanding what's at stake on any given snap of the football. That's what I want. And I think that, as fans, is what you should demand, you should ask for. We're not getting that. There's no accountability. There's no discipline. And, if you want to point fingers right at the coaching staff for the lack of discipline, do it. Because they're ultimately in charge here. I think we all know that, anybody else that has had, a couple of losing seasons or, 3-4 or whatever it's going to end up being now, and it's 2-7 this time, anybody other head coach in the league is rightfully going to be scrutinized and potentially fired, unless you're Bill Belichick, who has a lifetime worth of credibility built up in his on his behalf, and I frankly side with that. I've always been willing, and you know this if you've listened to the show for any length of time, I've always believed that he deserves that. He's earned it. Does that mean, he can continue to do what he's doing and the team continue to flounder? Of course it doesn't. At some point in time, push has to shove. Something has to give in somewhere. The Krafts own the team. It's their call. So if they keep Bill and Bill keeps doing Bill's thing and this team keeps going 2-7 or worse, well, then people stop showing up. And it hits you right where it hurts, in the pocketbook. And all that goodwill built up over the last 2 decades starts to erode. I don't think it's eroded yet. Far from it. Patriots are still a national, well-known global brand. The value of this team is increased exponentially since the Krafts bought it. For those that don't know the story, the Krafts paid roughly $170 million, for the stadium, the grounds, and the franchise when they bought the team back in '93, and it's now worth about $7 billion. According to Forbes. Pretty good ROI. So these guys do business. They know how to do business. I've always respected their ability to do business. Certainly the NFL respects the Krafts' ability to do business. That's why they're, putting these, positions of authority within their, leadership teams and things like that within their ownership groups. So these guys won't stand for, mediocre to poor performance very long, because otherwise they wouldn't be the businessmen that they've proven themselves to be. It's all going to take care of itself. The problem is we're too impatient. And I know this is year 4 post-Brady. I know that. And you think you start the right way, and then it doesn't work out, and then you take another tack with Mac, and then it doesn't work out because of, the 2 guys that you hire that you thought could coach offense that really couldn't coach offense. And so you're really back to year 1 in that philosophy. You're really back to year 1 and starting all over again with Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator. And so now what you've got, when Bill is handed, he's handed basically a wounded duck. That's what he's been handed here. He's been handed a wounded duck. He's got a team whose personnel has gone up and down like a thermometer, for the various needs that they thought they needed and guys that they thought that these coaches and previous coaches could coach. And, and then you bring these guys in and you coach them one way and then you coach them another and then you tell them to do this and then you tell them to do that until we get to the point where Mac Jones, as we've talked about before in this show, he's broke. I don't mean he's, financially not well off. He's broken. I'm not sure he's fixable. Time will ultimately tell that. But right now, Mac is still too valuable a bargaining chip to keep. Because he'll be on, still his rookie contract for, the year before the Patriots would have to, kick in on his fifth year. And you're going to need, at the very least, you're going to need a bridge option here if you're going to bring another quarterback in. So, no, they're not going to get rid of Mac. It's just that doesn't make business sense. I don't even think it makes football sense, to be quite honest with you. Mac's biggest problem is twofold, as we know. And we've talked about this, and I'll repeat it again here in case you've never heard this before, and I can't imagine you wouldn't have. Mac's problem is twofold. Number one, he doesn't have any receivers that he can rely upon. Number two, he hasn't had an offensive line he can rely upon. Now, the offensive line has played better over the last couple of weeks, without a doubt. By the way, in case you hadn't heard, Adrian Clem was announced today. The offensive line coach is going to be out for an amount of time due to an illness. Don't really know the nature of the illness, and even if I did, I'm not sure it'd be my place to share it. But we wish, they call him AK in the locker room. We wish, Coach Clem all the best as he, works on a recovery. So I think Coach Yates will end up, sliding over and taking over as an assistant there anyway. And I don't imagine that there will be too much that will be missed out here on because there's still a coach to pick up the slack. But at the same time, it just kind of speaks to the upheaval that has been in the front of Mac Jones all year long. It also makes you question if they've played better since Mike Owenu moved in at right tackle, why wasn't that done earlier? And was it because he had the bum ankle that he had worked on in the offseason? I don't know, maybe. Problem is that we ask these questions, they don't really get answered. So, we're sort of left to our own device to surmise and talk about. And that's kind of where I am here. So, what I'd like to do, at least to begin the program today, because clearly the negatives are out there, and I hate beating a dead horse because it really just doesn't serve any purpose. We know what this team is. It's not very good. I think we saw Jonathan Kraft say as much, when this network TV cameras are zooming in on him and Robert Kraft in the box on Sunday. I'm sure they didn't realize it, but, hey, that's why it happens. That's why you see the coaches, cover their faces with their play cards and such because they know people read lips. We all do. Oh, what did he say? Is that important? Oh, my gosh, what did he say? Oh, let's tweet it. Let's post it. Let's put it on TikTok. It's just that's the world we live in nowadays, which is silly, but okay. We're all looking for an edge. We're all looking for followers and likes and, to be in the know. But the fact remains is this team it's just not good. It hasn't been good for all year, and it's fallen well short of expectations. I think we all knew, and I heard Devin McCourty on WEEI, actually, locally here earlier today. I heard Devin McCourty say that, he's not surprised that this team has struggled. He was also very honest, and he said it did have something to do with his decision to retire after last year. He was pretty much heading that direction anyway, but when he saw the strength of schedule, he knew what was coming back, and you got new coaches trying to teach Mac again and this and that. He knew that with the combination of the strength of schedule and everything else that this was likely to be a struggle, and he was accurate. We can't see the forest for the trees in the way. That's our problem around here. We can't because we're fans and we're media and, we only see one thing. The Patriots are supposed to be better than this, or the Patriots are good or should be good because they've always been good for the last 20 years. But this is where each and every year is a mini, dynasty unto itself. I mean, one year does not mean you're going to do the same the next year, which makes, to me, the run that the Patriots have had all the more remarkable and likely to be unmatched. Sorry, Kansas City fans. It's not gonna. You're not gonna go to 9 Super Bowls in 23 years. You're not. When you do, then you have a right to call this program. If I'm still here, you have a right to call me and tell me, "I told you so." You have that right. And you know what I'll do? That's the sound of one hand clapping. It's the sound of one hand clapping. So here's what I wanted to start with today. All right. I was on a podcast, the Claire Perspective podcast, with our friend Claire from the UK. And I think she released it yesterday, and of course we're talking about football things. If you haven't heard it, you should listen to it. She does a really good job with it. For someone who's really a fan, she's about as thorough, I think, as you could possibly be in putting things together. That's why I like talking to her. Fun lady. I feel bad, though, because I ended up going negative in the conversation, and she tried her damnedest not to go negative. And it was just, I realized after it was all over, I said, I know she didn't want that show to go that way. She was trying to remain positive. She was trying to talk about positive things and things that we can look for and, a brighter outlook than the bleak one that I painted. Not that it was entirely bleak, but hey, I'm just calling it as I see it. And this is unusual for the Patriots, as we all know. This is something they don't go through a lot of. So, I hadn't gone through it in 30 years. Really? Well, close to 30 years. I mean, they were, 5-11 in Coach Belichick's first year in 2000? So, okay, that's basically what it was. So, you're on your way for the first losing record since that time, or before 7-9 in the COVID year. I don't really even count that year, to be honest with you. Worst record since at least 5-11. Anyway, you're on that road. And I know since you haven't had the ability to consider the repercussions of what happens when you're under 500, what happens when you don't, make the playoffs, what happens when you have a higher draft choice than you reasonably could expect. You try to focus on some different things, but the stark reality of the fact that you stink hits you like a hammer in the forehead. Ow, that hurts. Let's talk about it. And so there's a focus there naturally on something that is unusual, that is different. She tried to go another direction. I didn't quite let her go there. So I want to go another direction a little bit today anyway, here at the start, that Claire started to try to do. So I give Claire all the credit for the idea on this one. I would love to hear from whoever's listening. I would love to hear from you. Phone, email, Twitter or X, whatever the hell it is, Facebook, whatever you got, okay? I need one positive aspect to this season that you can come up with here at the midway point. We're at the midway point. We're going into Week 10. Patriots obviously have the bye week next week, and then they'll play another road game before they get to come back home. So there was only one home game in the entire month of November, which is actually kind of weird, but that's the way it goes. So they get the bye week after Week 10. So, in effect, we're at the midway point right now. They've played 9 games. They've got 8 games left to go over the next 9 weeks. I need one positive from you. Who do you like? What do you like? What do you see as optimistic? No pessimism, okay? I'm going to do my damnedest to hopefully listen to a few suggestions, read a few suggestions, and then come up with one to share with you, because I tried to give this some thought this morning, and I'm not sure I could come up with one. And I honestly believe it's because I'm jaded. I think it's because I have been so ensconced in the negativity of being 2-7 that it's really hard for me to find something to hang my hat on. Now, that being said, as I'm speaking here, I think I can come up with a couple right off the top of my head. I would tell you, first of all, I think Jabril Peppers has had an outstanding season for the most part. He's had a couple of boneheaded mistakes, but everybody does at some point in time or another. I would tell you that I think Kyle Duggar's a keeper, and I hope that they manage to re-sign him. I got to tell you that even though I've seen him somewhat limited, I really like Marte Mapu. I think we saw enough from Christian Gonzalez to think that he could be a staple here in New England for a long time, provided he stays healthy. Because now that he's been hurt and he's out for the year, and I know it wasn't necessarily his fault, but now he's going to have that tag of, He's always injured. He's going to get that tagged on him, even though this is his first time in his first year. It's going to happen. You heard it here first. That's the first question he's going to get asked when he comes back to, training camp next summer. How's the health? Could be able to stay healthy? We know there are lots of great players that appear to be really good athletes that just can't stay on the field because they keep getting hurt. Is he going to turn out to be one of those? There's a difference, and I've said it often. There's a difference between playing hurt and playing injured. You're going to learn to play hurt. You can't play if you're injured because that affects your career. If not your team, it affects your career. And Christian Gonzalez was injured. Matt Judon was injured. Several others were injured. But do we really know who's hurt and who's injured? And that's kind of where I am with this. So anyway, I'd love to hear a positive. I'd love to get a positive, something in performance, something in a coaching move, and a personnel move, if you can find one. I know Eldred can't. Which is fine. I'm okay with that. And if you have none, tell me that. I got none. That's fair. That's fair. But I'm trying to gauge a little bit of a temperature here because I think that there are some out there that can be had. I think we just have to sort of get through the disappointment of 2-7 and understand where they are and then use these as building blocks for the remainder of the season because that's really where the final 8 weeks of this season are going to be pointed toward. There can't be any other way to do it because there's nothing else to play for. The postseason isn't happening. That was gone a month ago, if we're really going to be truthful. But what is the building block that you see? What is the positive that you see? Is it an athlete? Is it a trend? Is it what is it? 855-PATS-500, web radio at patriots.com, at JR Broadcaster on X, and you can post on Facebook. All right, so again, as we said, Zach Cox from Nesson going to join us. Nate Atkins from the Indianapolis Star will join us here in 15, 20 minutes. Russell Baxter on Week 10 in the NFL at the bottom of the next hour. So it's still business as usual around here, even though half the personnel are already, sprechen Sie Deutsching. And, if they're not having an ice-cold Pilsner, I don't know what's wrong with these people. I heard today that it's considered an insult in Germany. And I have German blood. Part of my family, part of my mom's family is actually from Germany. And so I had heard this, and so I made a phone call to confirm it. When you're drinking with friends in Germany, which they do often because it's considered, copacetic to have alcohol with lunch or dinner. They drink a little bit more. They don't really see the issue in it because I don't know that they necessarily, binge drink like some of us do. But it's considered a discourtesy. It's considered rude if you don't clink a glass and then look the person you clink glasses with in the eye as you drink. It's considered a faux pas. It's considered, impolite. And I'm like, I never knew that. You always wonder why you see, Germans in their Lederhosen and, and all the German music playing in the background. All that stuff, right? I know this because I spent a few fall days in New Braunfels, Texas, which is basically West Germany, and the Worst Fests celebrations they have in New Braunfels. And if you live in and around New Braunfels, Texas, you know precisely what I'm talking about. I always wondered why everybody's so jolly, and they always look right at each other, and even some of them kind of do the fake mwah, mwah on each other's cheeks and things like that, and then they clink glasses and then they drink. And I'm just like, why does it look so personal? Okay, maybe that's why. So I found that out today. Just an interesting fact I thought I would, share. I don't know that we'll get a chance to do that, but if you're, heading to Germany, or maybe you're listening and you're going to the game, this weekend, maybe you can experience that and report back here on the program. Zach, are you going to Germany?
I am, yes. I'm flying out tomorrow afternoon, getting in early Friday morning. I appreciate the early lessons we're getting here. I got to keep that in mind for when if I visit a beer garden or anything while I'm over there.
Offer to clink your glass, offer to clink your mug, right? And then look them in the eye, brother.
I will definitely keep that in mind. But, it's going to be an interesting trip. If I'm worried about the jet lag and all that, I can't imagine what something like this is for players who actually have to play a football game after all this.
Right, exactly. I think the only saving grace to that, because I was considering that again earlier today, and I said, well, you know what? The Colts got to go through the same damn thing because they're not over there early. So, I mean, the only team that's really had an advantage in a European game this year would be the Jaguars because they got to stay over there for 2 straight weeks, right? When they were in London.
Yeah, and you even think back to last week, Miami was the team that traveled early. The Chiefs showed up right around the same time the Patriots are, and the Chiefs ended up winning that game. So it's unclear how much of an advantage that actually is to get the body clock reset and all that. But at least it won't be a factor in this week's game because the Patriots and Colts are both taking similar approaches here.
Zach Cox from Nesson joining us here inside the Playbook. All right, so let's talk about that approach, Zach, because well, first of all, let's take care of some business. Number one, the report that NFL Network had today about J.C. Jackson not being on the plane tomorrow. Any thoughts on that, one way or the other?
It's disappointing from a Patriots perspective, especially because over the first couple of weeks that he was back, J.C. Jackson seemed to be reintegrating well. His position coach, Mike Pellegrino, had a lot of great things to say about kind of the attitude he was bringing in the room and the work ethic and all of that. And then now, less than a month after his trade, he's already running into off-the-field type issues that are going to keep him out of a game here this weekend. It's not incredibly surprising, but it's definitely a disappointing development. I'm curious now to see whether there will be any repercussions for Jack Jones this week, who reportedly also missed curfew. Of course, sat the first 3 series of last game, didn't play much in the second half. He was at practice today, but I'm going to be curious to see whether there's any lasting punishment from his reported infraction there. Right.
We should add here, again, for those that may not have known it, this was for an alleged missed curfew, correct?
Yep. According to multiple reports, it was a missed curfew at the team hotel last Saturday night. Mm-hmm. And even though the Patriots were playing a home game, a lot of times in the NFL, teams will have their players stay at a hotel rather than their homes the night before the game just to get some final prep in there. And
we do it we do it in college basketball. The kids they sort of sequester, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty common practice. Mm-hmm. And again, according to those reports, Jackson and Jones both were late arriving to the hotel. I believe they were late for a meeting, and that's what led to some of the role reductions that they saw on Sunday. Right,
and that, of course, that would make sense then because it seemed like, in the first, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes of the game, if you were trying to follow the game on Twitter, if you couldn't, watch it for whatever reason or listen to it on the radio, that's all anybody was talking about was, hey, did you see J.C. Jackson and Jack Jones aren't playing? They didn't start. Oh, my God, the world's going to end here. And I'm thinking, well, okay, so what? And then I think we come to realize that, obviously something happened. And just like what something happened with Kayshon Boutte last week, he opened his mouth when he probably shouldn't have. And we know that Bill has done that before, and Bill did it again. And so it doesn't surprise me that there was something extraneous going on here. And if it's true that they missed a curfew, then clearly this all makes sense. And then it also lends a heck of a lot of credence to Tom Telesco, the Los Angeles Chargers general manager, who had the initial report that was on ESPN that basically said he went into a defensive back meeting after they traded JC a couple of weeks ago and personally apologized for signing him in the first place. And like, wow, that says almost too much.
Yeah, it was. Jackson's tenure with the Chargers was just an unmitigated disaster. For them to be willing to trade him back here for essentially nothing while also paying his entire salary, it says a lot that they were basically saying, we will do whatever it takes to get this guy out of our building. It was interesting to me in the game on Sunday that he did end up playing over 50 snaps. He basically resumed his normal workload after sitting out those first two series. So I'm curious whether there was something else that happened after the game, whether it was maybe his reaction to that benching or something that came after, because it is a bit of a leap to go from, okay, we're not going to play you for the first series, but you're going to play the final 50 snaps or so, to we're not even going to take you on this trip to Germany. We're going to leave you home. And according to the reports, hopefully he comes back with a better mindset after the bye week. That seems like a bit of a leap there. So I'm curious whether there was something else that transpired in this whole situation.
Yeah, there's probably more to the story, but I think, honestly, this is all you really need to know. If they missed a curfew, regardless of whatever happened to, JC in Los Angeles, and whatever happened to Jack Jones, with his, gun thing. Can I call it a gun thing? Yeah. His gun thing this summer that he did not do jail time for, and then his, liking somebody else's tweet. I try not to bury myself with that stuff. Too many people read way too much into some things, but okay, I get it. I understand it. It's fine. It's just what people do today. I'm trying not to be, too much of a boomer here, but I'm kind of like, wow, if these guys really aired and broke, a team rule, discipline should be expected, because, quite frankly, that's been the problem with this team all season long, Zach. They've had no discipline and very, very little accountability for their actions.
Yeah, it's the on-the-field discipline, the off-the-field discipline, as it shows in a situation like this. It's just you want to call it uncharacteristic of a Bill Belichick coach Patriots team, but at this point it really isn't. I mean, the Patriots have been kind of doing things like this, not the off-the-field stuff, but they've had the in-game mistakes, the penalties, the turnovers. They've been making very un-Patriot-like plays for what seems like 3 or 4 years now, and it's certainly intensifying this season and within these last couple of weeks. I mean, you saw all the special teams penalties at the end of last week's game. It's just it's a indisciplined team, if that's the word. A not disciplined team, an indisciplined team, whatever you want to call that.
Undisciplined, yeah.
The there we go.
Not non-disciplined.
Third time's a charm there. But, and it's been a major issue for this team, and I don't know how you fix it. And it's not something that you would really expect to turn around as this team's record continues to get worse and worse. It's not like if players aren't doing something when the team is 2-4, are they going to suddenly start doing it when the team is 3-11 potentially? Right. I just think there's potential for all of this to get even worse by the time the season's over.
Zach, in your estimation, how did this non-discipline, undisciplined, indiscipline, whatever we're going to call it, lack of discipline, how did this lack of discipline get started? Because it's so anti-Patriot based on, what we've seen over 22 previous seasons under Bill Belichick here.
It really is. I think probably a factor in it is the fact that so many of that former guard from this team is gone. There are very few members of the kind of dynasty-era Patriots that are still left on this team. I think it's only 7 or 8 on this roster. So there's not a lot of players who were here when the team was winning consistently, and kind of knew the culture, knew the expectations, knew the standard. And that standard, I think, it's a demanding standard, and it's a lot more difficult to maintain when the results aren't there on the field. So I think all of that has contributed to it, and I think part of it has to go back to coaching too. I mean, it's when a team is indisciplined, it falls on the assistant coaches and it falls on the head coach, and the Patriots, as I've said, have just lacked discipline now for multiple years running. Yeah.
Remember when the Eagles' Lane Johnson said that he wouldn't want to play here because he'd heard that it wasn't going to any fun to play here?
Yeah.
Except for the fact that, of course, the Patriots were winning then. But I wonder if
the argument was always, sorry to interrupt there, John, but the argument had always been, it's not that fun to play here. Yeah, you're not going to maybe love coming to work every day, But at the end of the season, you're going to have a very good chance to be
in the postseason,
at the very least playing in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Now, when that's not even a possibility anymore in a season like this, where they're 2-7, it just makes it a lot more difficult for players to kind of want to be part of that. I think it's basically something that you're like, yeah, I'll suck it up because this team is really good and I want to win a title. It's a little bit more. It's a tougher sell when you're kind of trending toward one of the top picks in the NFL draft.
And I think that's human nature. So let's be honest. I think we'd all have a tendency to like, oh man, whenever you've got to get back up and do it again or deal with it because things aren't going as well as they had been in the past. But this is also why I speak to personal accountability, because players are professionals. They're paid extraordinarily well to play this game. No matter how rough, how tough, how violent it might be, they're still paid well to do it. And there's been not just a lack of discipline, but there's been a lack of personal accountability. And this is where this is a systemic organizational failure, because you can go back to the kind of guy they recruit to bring in here and draft and sign to bring in here to talk about personal accountability. If a guy is not going to hold himself and others personally accountable, why would you bring them in here?
Yeah, it all is part of the same kind of conversation, I think, and it's all sort of cyclical as well, because if you have the sustained success in a certain culture, in a certain system, then you develop players who are accustomed to playing and succeeding in that kind of system. And then that sort of trickles down to the new players. You have the older guys that will say, hey, this might not be that fun, but look at the results that it gave us. Get with the program and you'll see those results. And you still have some of those players left. I still think like Matthew Slater and David Andrews and guys like that are great leaders on this team. But when you have 80% of the roster that has not experienced winning via the Patriot way, especially since that Patriot way isn't a lot of fun a lot of the times, it's just much more difficult to get everybody with the program.
All right. Zach, a couple of other quick ones here. Number one, what are your thoughts on a positive? I asked a question of the fans earlier to come up with one positive note in order to try to kind of wipe out or rub over or gloss over some of the negativity that's certainly been spread around here of late. Can you think of a positive aspect of the first 9 weeks of this season that might be something for this team, this organization, to kind of hang their hats on?
It's difficult, right?
Yeah.
I'm actually writing a story as we speak on the kind of building block type players that are on this Patriots roster. The players that you can see being part of the next successful Patriots team, whenever that is. Mm-hmm. And there really aren't many. Christian Gonzalez is the obvious one, but he's out for the season. We won't see him until next year. I would say Demario Douglas is part of that group as well, but he's not a player at this point in his career who can carry a passing attack as we've seen in these last couple of weeks. Christian Barmore's playing really well lately. I would say he's definitely a player who should be part of the Patriots' future. But if you get further down on that list, you really can't find a ton. I think Jabril Peppers is having a very good year. I think he could be part of that next kind of Patriots leadership core. But the fact that it's so difficult to pick out more than 2, 3, 4 players for that list is just kind of emblematic of where the Patriots are as a franchise right now.
Sure. And then your thoughts on the matchup with the Colts this weekend. Clearly, both teams are going to be fighting, some sort of jet lag one way or the other. How much will that play a factor? I mean, could this still be a pretty good football game in particular in terms of just the back and forth nature that's liable to take place?
Yeah, I'm hoping it's a good football game. I'm hoping we get a more entertaining game than some of the recent ones that the Patriots have played. This Colts team is interesting. They're not that good, but they are feisty. I mean, they've scored 20 or more points in every game they've played this season. They can put up decent numbers. Gardner Minshew is a fun player to watch. Mm-hmm. He's kind of that vintage gunslinger. He's going to make some mistakes, but he's also going to throw some touchdown passes. They got some good players on that defense. I think it's appropriate that the Colts are favored in this game. I think they should be favored in this game. I still think the Patriots can keep it close with pretty much anybody in the NFL if they play to their potential, which they just haven't for nearly every game this season. But if I had to make a prediction, I would say probably, I don't know, Colts 21, Patriots 16, and you kind of leave Germany with another disappointing taste in your mouth if you're a Patriots fan. But I mean, a win in this game would ease a lot of nerves going into the bye week, especially with the questions about Bill Belichick's job security and on all down the line for that. So if the Patriots can win and sort of give themselves a little bit of momentum going into that back half of the season, I think it would obviously be huge. But again, I think it's appropriate that the Colts are favored in this game.
Should we be worried about Bill Belichick's job security?
I don't know. I think by the end of the season, I certainly would be. I still can't see it happening during the season. I think that would just be too large of a step for Robert Kraft. I wouldn't rule it out completely, especially based on some of the reporting that we've heard recently. I think if this season continues the way it is, sorry, we got a helicopter overhead here. I think if this season continues the way it has, I think it will absolutely be a question this offseason. But I would be mildly surprised if we wake up Monday morning to a report that Patriots and Bill Belichick are parting ways. I don't think that's going to happen during the year.
Yeah, I would kind of tend to agree with that. Zach, safe travels over there. The helicopter's probably there to pick you up and take you to Frankfurt, right?
I wish. I got a nice red eye ahead of me, so that should be a lot of fun.
Perfect. Safe travels. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, John.
You got it. Zach Cox from Nesson at Nesson.com. And we'll transfer, the thought process there to a gentleman who covers the Colts for the Indianapolis Star. Nate Atkins joins us here in the playbook. Nate, John Rook here in Foxborough. I'm curious if you heard a little bit of the end of the conversation that I had with Zach there and what you thought about his assessment of the Colts football team and his assessment of the potential for this game on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's certainly safe to expect a low-scoring game between these two teams. The Colts that assessment's pretty good. The Colts are kind of they're trying to adjust to not having Anthony Richardson anymore at quarterback. They've got Gardner Minshew is the trusted veteran for this coaching staff, but he's kind of had a rough past month of turnovers, and last week was just a struggle to really move the ball against the Panthers, even though they won with their defense. So it's a team that's trying to get back to how they used to win a couple years ago with Jonathan Taylor. He's had a kind of weird year off of football, and they've been easing him back in. And if they could get him back to being Patriots saw 2 years ago on the Monday night game in Indianapolis, that is more how they want to play going forward, because I think they realize they just have some tough absences in the passing game right now between Anthony Richardson being out, Josh Downs, their rookie slot receivers, banged up. They haven't had their top tight end, Jelani Woods, all season. And it's just been kind of herky-jerky in that phase of the game. So they really want to be a downhill rushing team, and so we'll see if they can get back to that this week.
What is the prognosis for Taylor getting back close to somewhere to normal?
Well, he's been building back into football shape, and last week was the first time that just looked anecdotally like he was there in terms of workload. He took almost all the snaps for running backs. Part of it is, getting teams to let them run. So what the Panthers were doing is they were running a five-man defensive line, and the Colts couldn't throw them out of that. And it's the same thing that happened against the Jaguars a few weeks ago, and it kind of takes Jonathan Taylor out of the game a little bit until they can hit enough passes to, lighten the box a little bit. As far as the explosiveness, Jonathan Taylor looks like that. He scored a screen touchdown last week. He had a 42-yard run the week before. So I think the speed, the vision, the cutback, the finish contact is there for him. It's just kind of finding ways to give him the runs on smart downs where the box isn't so stacked that lets him have a chance to really break one.
You know, the part of the Colts team that I guess that I've noticed, at least from the get-go, clearly because of some of the injuries and, Gardner Minshew playing quarterback and less than 100% Jonathan Taylor, just trying to ease his way back in, as you've already described. Guy that really sort of I was curious about and then saw that he had a really nice bounce-back game in that win over the Panthers this last week was Kenny Moore. And what do you have? He had 2 picks, right? And took him back for touchdowns, correct?
Yep. First time in Colts history.
So this defense is making some plays, and that could be a big reason why certainly they won the game last week.
Yeah, last week was very much Kenny Moore and DeForest Buckner just wrecking the game. It's interesting because the Colts defense had actually really been struggling heading into that game. They'd given up 30-plus points in 3 straight games. Just having a hard time with quarterback injuries and defensive tackle Grover Stewart suspended, and some things have just piled up on them. But Kenny Moore, he really is having that bounce back year, looking like the Pro Bowler he was a couple years ago. And if the Colts can force teams to play through him and deal with DeForest Buckner in the middle and face their pass rush, that's where they're in a better spot. If teams are able to pass protect and get the ball to the perimeter or just consistently run up the middle, that's where they have a harder time playing defense.
Yeah, and I think that based on what the Patriots tried to do with Ramondre Stevenson last week, if they hadn't been somewhat foolish with some of their stupid penalties, I think Stevenson did a really good job of running up the middle against the Commanders, and it seems to me that would be an opportunity at least against the Colts. But the Colts at the same time, though, I'm kind of looking at how they are, and I mentioned Kenny Moore's big week because Mac Jones seems to have 1 or 2 really nonsensical throws per game, and a couple of them have gone for pick sixes, and it would seem to me that this might be an opportunity for Mr. Moore or somebody else there in that defensive backfield to have a big game over in Frankfurt.
Yeah, that's where I would expect the Patriots should try and limit the number of times he drops back to throw, because it is going to be a tough matchup where I know the Patriots have some injuries at wide receiver. Those are really the spots to try and get the Colts from the outside. If you throw in the slot, Kenny Moore is just kind of over everything right now.
Mm-hmm.
And in the pass rush is getting home on a lot of teams. And so I know Mac, more mobile quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson gave them trouble, but a more pocket quarterback has a harder time getting in lanes where he can throw around DeForest Buckner. So I think that's going to be the Colts' defensive strategy, is to try and get a couple big turnovers against Mac Jones, because they're hobbled at a couple spots, defensive tackle and outside cornerback, and they're trying to kind of make up for those with turnovers.
Gotcha. All right. I have to ask you now, is Nate Atkins from the Indianapolis Star joined us here in the Playbook. I got to ask you about Anthony Richardson, because the debate here is is Nate, not Nate, excuse me, is the quarterback, Mac Jones. Thank you. I can't spit it out already. Mac Jones, is he the guy for this team's long-term future? That question has been asked more than once. I think everybody's tending to say that no, he probably isn't. Is Richardson still the guy for the Colts' future in your estimation?
Yeah, as long as they can find a way to get him healthy and keep him on the field, I think everyone here was in love with the player and the person that they saw from the moment they drafted him. He's been as dialed in and professional as you could imagine. And on the field, there's a lot of talk that he was going to take time to get on the field. He's so young, but really what he needed was reps, and it turned out that he was further along as a passer than I think a lot of people realized. He was able to create explosive games down the field, led them back from a 23-0 deficit to the Rams. And, he mostly protected the ball. I think he only had 2 turnovers, only 1 interception. So he did not really look like an overwhelmed rookie, but he did look like a guy who had elite upside as a runner and as a guy who could really get the ball down the field. And they loved him as a teammate, and it just was a really unfortunate string of injuries that kind of ended his season. And that's going to be the conversation for them, is how do they unleash the rushing and keep him on the field. But I think as a person, as a player, they couldn't be any more convinced that they found the guy they want.
Well, this Indy team comes in at 4-5. I'm not sure what the expectations were from your perspective, but is 4-5 where this team should be?
Yeah, I think it might even be a half step further than I thought they would be. They had really scaled the roster back after they only won 4 games last year, and they had really embraced the youth movement at a lot of important positions like quarterback, offensive tackle, cornerback. And so I didn't know if they would have enough at the premium positions to win these games. I think Shane Steichen's getting a lot out of what he has on offense, which is pretty limited at some spots. Their offensive and defensive lines have really stepped up and been better than I think a lot of people thought they would be. So water may be leveling a little bit because they have lost 3 of 4, and then they beat the Panthers last week, and that may be more about the Panthers. But this was a team coming into the year I thought would win maybe 5 games or so.
Wow.
So I think they're a step above that at least.
They're only 1-4 at home, though, I noticed, and that's the same problem the Patriots have had. Of course, the Patriots can't really win on the road either right now, but 1-4 at home. Why the disparity between home and road play, do you think?
That's so hard to figure out. The Colts have actually lost 9 of their past 10 home games.
Wow.
The last year.
That's crazy.
So it is crazy. I mean, part of that was they lost 7 in a row to end last year. So some of that's that, but yeah, it's been strange. They've had very dialed in efforts on the road. They've just, outside of Jacksonville, where they never play well, they've gotten the lead and they've played within themselves on the road. And at home is where they just commit a lot of turnovers and and just other bad mental mistakes. So I don't know if they lose a little bit of focus, thinking they'll have it easier at home. Sometimes it's happened to where when they need that bounce back win off of a home loss, they're on the road. So I don't know. It's been hard to figure out so far.
All right, final one then for you, Nate. And again, thanks for the time. Are you going over to Frankfurt for this?
I am going over. I fly out early afternoon tomorrow.
Okay. You know how to speak German?
I don't know how to speak German, even though it's a lot of my family ancestry. But luckily, I hear that just about everyone there speaks a little bit of English, at least in the Frankfurt area.
They do, but understand, I want you to understand, because this is also, it's a part of my family background as well. Understand that most Germans, even though they can speak English, they won't offer to speak English to you unless you ask them to.
Oh.
So just a word to the rise. I want to help out my friends that are heading over to Germany with a little German etiquette. There are 2 things that I already mentioned. The other one on the program here today was when you're drinking a beer, okay, you're going to clink glasses, which is usually a sort of a German tradition, but especially if you're doing it for with someone from Germany, look them in the eye. Otherwise, it's an insult.
Oh, okay.
So
I hear they
just thought I'd share
I'm
that.
definitely checking that out, and I know the beer's it's room temperature, right? That's how they serve it.
Unfortunately, they don't like it ice cold like we do. They prefer it tepid. I think that's probably the best way to put it. And it's a little tough to get used to. I mean, it's not like it's warm beer, but it's not, I mean, like, we like an ice cold frosty one, where you get the icicles on the mug type of thing. They don't do it like that. They don't do it like that. So I just, figured I'd throw that one out. One other positive thing that you can think about this Colts team that's really been a little bit of a surprise to you this year. You've already mentioned that, they're a little ahead of schedule maybe than what I thought they would be. Who's performed beyond expectation in your estimation in that regard?
I think the biggest surprise has been the Colts offensive line. So last year they were just really a disaster unit. They kept changing the lineup up, and they just couldn't keep any rushers free and turn it over all the time. And this year's group's playing much better together. And really the growth of their left tackle, Bernard Ryman, who got thrown in last year, this will be an interesting game for him. He's from Austria, so he's going to have tons of family there. And last year it was just way too early for him. This year he's bigger, stronger, much more comfortable and confident. And it's gotten Quentin Nelson, their left guard, back to being an All-Pro. Gotten their center, Ryan Kelly, back closer to being a Pro Bowl type player. And that group has just really brought it together to where they can run the ball pretty well and avoid disaster. The brutal sacks haven't hit them outside of one game against Myles Garrett, which happens to kind of everybody. But that group really, I think, has stepped up and allowed less to be on the plate of the skilled players, and that's been a big difference this year.
All right. Safe travels, Nate. Really appreciate the time today. I realize it's a tough trip for players and media because you won't be there for that long, but I do hope you get a chance to drink a couple of tepid ones at the very least.
Absolutely. We'll do it. I'll make sure to look them in the eye when I clean them up.
I figured you might like that. All right. Very good. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it. Nate Atkins, who covers the Colts for the Indianapolis Star. You can find him on X at Nate Atkins, ATKINS _. That's where you find him, at Nate Atkins _ on X, Twitter, whatever the hell it is. Okay. Russell Baxter joins us in half an hour, but I want to make sure that you know the phone lines are open. 855-PATS 500, 855-PATS 500. I gotta find some positives. I need some positives, and I'm kind of jonesing for him a little bit here. Just I'm sure like Claire was when she had me on her Claire Perspective podcast yesterday when we recorded it, or whenever the hell it was that we recorded. What's today? Wednesday? When did we do that, Claire? We did it Monday, right? And you put it out yesterday, and obviously you got to spend some time listening to it. She's one of the ones that you should definitely listen to because she puts a lot of passion into her performance. And for those that have listened to the show, you know that she's been a frequent caller in the past, and we encouraged her. I encouraged her, to take that passion, put it forward, and, write a few articles here and there and start a podcast. And she's found a landing spot, and she's developed it quite nicely. And I would encourage that of any, fan that really, wants to get into the biz. That's what it's out there for. And there are some really good podcasts. We even, earlier this year, it was the last preseason show, and I assume that we'll do it again in this coming offseason. We'll take a couple of shows in the offseason and invite podcast hosts, Patriots podcast hosts, to be guest hosts on this show. And we'll exchange views, ideas, give you a chance to promote your own podcast. So somebody who might not know about your pod might tune you in, listen to you, sample your product, see what you know, that kind of thing. And we'll do that again this next year because, information is not exclusive to just, one or two people, or just because we happen to be here at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough doesn't mean that we hold all the opinions. I think what we hold here are educated opinions based on the fact that we've been around the team for a long time, but it doesn't mean we hold every opinion, and I think that's kind of what we like to hear. We like to hear what other people are thinking, or what other people are doing, and what other people are talking about, and so that's what we try to share here on the show and hopefully see if we can't create some really good dialogue, because, again, that's what this is all about. It's about the sharing the dialogue and about trying to figure out a way to fix this thing. I mean, in the past, it was easy to talk about a team that was 7-2 rather than 2-7. You're 7-2. You're figuring, oh my gosh, okay, well they lost 2 games, and holy smokes, are they going to be in the running for the number 1 seed? Blah blah blah. And that's usually what the indication is. It's a little different story this year, isn't it? And it's just weird. It just doesn't sit well. And that's why I'm asking for some kind of a positive outlook. I threw out a couple. I mean, I honestly believe that, there might end up being a positive outlook here if a guy like Owenu entrenches himself at right tackle. That's what they really need to do. And they need to find a reliable left tackle because Trent Brown has been as reliable as, teats on a hog. I'm just like, wow. For such a massive-sized man, he's just been woefully inconsistent. He's got a lot of talent, got a lot of ability, but I've seen him whipped like a rented mule on occasion this year. It's not good. Hasn't been fun. Sure, it hadn't been fun for Mac Jones either. And you definitely need, some help at offensive guard. I know that, it's been a trial by fire thing for, guys like Antonio Mafi especially. Cole Strange has been banged up much of this year. He went out, after the first play of the season, for God's sake, before, coming back in. And even though he's played respectably, I think, the last couple of weeks, you still haven't had, what your projected starting offensive lineup was going to be. You still haven't had it. Calvin Anderson just got put on IR. He's done for the year. I think we all expected more out of Calvin. So there's still some answers that need to be found there. But I think that they took a little bit of a step maybe in allowing them with higher draft choices to only having to settle for one high draft pick as an offensive lineman instead of two. Now, it doesn't mean they won't draft someone who could play right tackle somewhere down the line, but I certainly believe, that isn't as much of a priority as maybe if you're drafting in the top 5 to 7, which it looks like the Patriots right now are on target for next April. You're probably thinking skill more than anything else. I'm not going to say quarterback. I'm not going to go that route. I've told you before, and this is before I saw Caleb Williams sort of, emotionally implode this last weekend after they got beat by Washington and blubber, in the arms of his mother in the stands after USC lost to Washington. And I'm not, blaming him for being emotional. That, happens to everybody. But I'm just kind of like, wow. You also need to consider that in USC's 3 losses, they were all to nationally ranked teams. He hasn't beaten a nationally ranked team for the Trojans this year as quarterback. Yes, I know he won the Heisman Trophy a year ago, but who have they beaten? And you think he's going to come in here and be the be-all to end-all at quarterback? Come on. I'm not sure that the answer is, what's his name from North Carolina? I'm just not sure. I'm not tuned into that. I'm just not, Drake May. I'm not tuned into it. Michael Penix from Washington, I think he's got some mobility. As a lefty, he certainly is unconventional. I mean, I saw him throw that touchdown pass this past weekend on the dead run to the sideline, and it's almost like on the dead run he threw the dart into the end zone. And, I mean, how do you guard that? How do you defend that? I don't know. It was a hell of an athletic play. I mean, it was a laser of a throw, and it was a great catch. And, yeah, he's got some talent there, but I'm just saying, wow, I mean, I don't know if it's top 5, top 7. I think I mean, depending upon who's out there, this team has a lot of need. I just don't, and because you're good at least for another year. I mean, if the guy isn't there that that you can depend upon for the next 5 full years, and I think we're coming to the conclusion that Mac Jones is not that guy, and it's taken us 3 years and 1 bum year in between. Really 2 years to determine that. I mean, nobody would have said this time 2 years ago. This time 2 years ago, Mac Jones was a rookie quarterback leading his team to the playoffs. Think about that for a moment, okay? And people ask, well, what has Bill Belichick done since Tom Brady left? Well, he took a rookie quarterback and led the team into the playoffs. There's something to be said for that. And I don't think that gets enough credit. Now, you can certainly blame Bill for what happened in the aftermath. He is the head coach. There were some calculated moves that just did not calculate. But Mac's not the problem. I'm going to reiterate that. Mac's not the problem. There's a lot of stuff that's broken around him. He doesn't have the same weapons as a Tua Tagovailoa has. He doesn't have the same weapons, as a lot of other quarterbacks don't have. He just doesn't have them. And you've had underperformance from, Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster name one. Every receiver is underperformed, including the tight ends. Everybody's underperformed. So if you think, it's all on Mac's shoulders, then you're not thinking straight. And I actually view that almost as a positive. I'd love to see Mac have, somebody who can stretch the field. I'd love to see Mac have somebody who could be considered a reliable slot receiver that isn't hurt or damaged goods coming in. And I hear often, somebody stopped me, a couple of nights ago at college basketball game I was doing. I was like, what do the Patriots really need to do? They still need to, they got to do something about Mac. And I'm like, wait. Mac's not the entire problem. It's easy sell. That's an easy thing because he's such a focal point. That's not really the problem. Problem is everything else around him. Now, is he making, silly plays? Yeah. Is he throwing across his body? And he did that again this last week against Washington. Almost got it picked. Mac throwing to his left across his body is been tough to watch. It's almost like he loses a half a second with his delivery. And so teams are ganging up when he goes to the right. Because those are the passes that he can drop in on a dime, and he's still got some of that accuracy. But when he's on the run and he's throwing across and he's going to his left, that's a hard play to make. And I don't know if that's just the nature of the receiver that was there or what, but I'm like, wow, there are some lousy routes being run. And when you couple that with some of the inaccuracy and underthrow and going off the back foot and all that kind of stuff, it's like that's a disaster, and it has proven to be so. So how do we think positively? How do we turn the negatives into positives? I'm just kind of, I'd really like to know what you think. 855-PATS-500. Russell Baxter will join us here in 20 minutes. Claire sends an email. She says, thank you for the show shout-out. As for positives, I think this team has more potential than it is playing at, so my positive is the hope we see the real potential come through more the rest of the year. And my guy Hunter Henry is still playing good. The defense has lots of potential, too, even though it's been hit with injuries. Future can still be bright. Ode to the light. I think that, there's a lot to be said for that. I've always liked Hunter Henry. By the way, Claire, my wife Robin, her favorite player is Hunter Henry too. She just thinks, he's good as a receiver and he busts his butt and he seems to be accountable. And that's part of the reason why you see him speak to the media during the course of the week here. There's like 2 or 3 guys that do that and they sort of speak for everybody. And Hunter's one of those guys because he's one of those guys that doesn't mind being held accountable. And I think that's a bright side. I do think that's a positive. And I think the Patriots should consider make sure that he's on that list to bring back for next year. I don't know about Mike Gesicki. He's been a largely a disappointment. But then again, Mike's been asked to do some things that maybe Mike isn't the best at, just because there have been some offensive line issues throughout the course of this year. Still would like to see him over the middle as that big 6'6" target, and we really haven't seen a lot of that this year. And I don't know why. And I don't know if that's a play calling issue. I don't know if that's a Mac issue. I don't know if that's a Mike Gesicki issue. I don't know what the issue is. But I would tell you, I've long been intrigued when I heard that the Patriots were getting him and signing him. I was thinking, wow, that's a great pickup. And that's certainly been a big disappointment. But it's hard for me to say that Hunter Henry's been a disappointment because I think he's been about as reliable a receiver as the Patriots have had this year. So I would agree with that particular thing. Richard says, hello, just wondering where PU is. Dude, Richard, thanks. They're in Germany, and they'll be providing programming starting tomorrow on Thursday. Appreciate you, though. Christian, I know everyone is raving for us to draft a QB in this draft, but just looking at what Garrett Wilson is doing for Zach Wilson, who is an average QB at best, I think the best route is to get that elite pass catcher. It elevates whatever quarterback to a higher level. Here's my plan. If I was GM, give me Bowers or I can't even read that. Come on, Christian. What are we doing here? MHJ. Trade up if needed. And, I thought Marvin Harrison. And draft Daniels in the second round. Re-sign KB and Mike Evans in free agency. An offense that consists of KB, Evans, Douglas, Bowers, or MHJ is a good start to long process we have ahead for the team. Let me kind of look at that individually. I think you're looking at Kendrick Bourne, and I would agree with that. Bourne was one of the guys that before he, hurt himself and tore his ACL, that he was one of those guys that I think you could count on. He was having a better year than certainly he had a year ago. I'd love to see that as well. How much of his ACL, though, is going to be healable and rehabable in time for him to come back and be, a contributor at the start of next season. We don't know that yet. Mike Evans in free agency, I have to give that a little bit more thought. My initial inclination is, as I'm watching a replay of the Bucks and the Texans on NFL Network, my inclination is okay. Let's see if he's got gas left in the tank, especially if you're not paying premium dollars. I actually am trending to think now that Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the top pick in the NFL draft. Might be. I think it'd be unusual, likely, to have a wide receiver go that route. But at the same time, I think he could be considered. Because I think teams are going to tend to shy away from Caleb Williams. I just do. And if you've got a top 5 to 7 pick, which it seems like the Patriots are trending for at this time, then, what are they right now? 4th, I think. I'm not sure where we'll end up, but I would tell you that you got a lot of needs, and I want somebody who I know can contribute right away. And what is the biggest need? What's the major need? I got to have points, man. I got to have something on offense. This team has hit 20 once? It's incredible to think that in this day and age of 5 wide, spread offense, shotgun all the time kind of thing, that the Patriots can't score. It's dumbfounding. And so you got to figure out a way to add an extra 7 to 10 points a game minimum. Minimum. That's what I think. Christian also says, please do not waste a first-round pick on a tackle. Save that for next year. Re-sign Owenu and Brown. They're serviceable at the tackle spots. Plug in the 18 OL that Bill drafted last draft at guard. I'm not sure. Is that 18? Is that what that says, or is that 1B? I can't read that. Thanks, Christian. Okay. I think I understand your thought process there. I think there are a couple of tackles that will be, certainly more than 2 tackles that will be first-round worthy. I just don't know, depending upon where the Patriots pick, if that high, those tackles should go that high. I hate to say it. I can see the Patriots trading down for more draft pick stock and then taking a tackle later in the first round. I can see it. Depending upon what happens in free agency. And I think we all know there will be an increased amount of cap space, and the Patriots have some money to spend. They'll be one of the top, available spenders in the league for next year. We've known that for a couple of years now. Our good buddy Pat's Cap keeps reminding me of that, since I, follow his posts all the time. And I could see that happening. And there will be people that will be totally ripped at Bill for doing that. I could see that happening because there's no doubt tackle's a need. And I think you need more than just serviceable at tackle. When you have a quarterback that occasionally has footwork issues, and Mac does, when you have a quarterback that isn't exactly nimble or nifty afoot, you need extra protection. I think you need to have elite at the ends. The Patriots barely have serviceable. Barely. And I don't think serviceable is what they need, which is why I think there has to be some consideration to the offensive line in the first round. There just has to be. We talked about this last year. Before last April's draft, we talked about, hey, don't be surprised. I think the Patriots take a tackle in the first round. And, yes, Christian Gonzalez slipped down to them at 17. And it's like, okay, well, that's a no-brainer. I realize that. They got to take the guy because, you can have a foundation piece to your defensive backfield for years to come. And so I understand them making a move, but save somebody else, save for someone else slipping down like that in the first round and then falling to you in your lap like Christian Gonzalez did. I think you need another offensive lineman. Do we not need that? Do we not recognize that now after all of the struggles on the offensive line? Oh, don't take an offensive lineman. They can get those in the 3rd or 4th round. Stop that thought process. Stop it right now. Stop it. You need what you need. You need offensive help. You need receiver. You need a lineman. You might need a running back. I think you do. And hell, if he falls down to you, you might take a quarterback. You might. You need too much. You need too much. That's the issue. That's the problem. Okay? So you can't really afford, to choose. You really can't. Let's see. Let me go with Michael sends this. He goes, John, first time, long time. I racked my brain trying to come up with positives. And this is what I came up with. Pop Douglas. He's the reason I keep tuning in. He is the most dynamic weapon Mac has. His punt returns need to be smarter, but at least he takes accountability about it. That can be fixed, and will be ironed out. Appreciate you, brother. Hey, I appreciate the thought, Michael. Thank you. And I would agree with you 110%. Save for his little brain fart when he fumbled earlier in the season. He got caught in Bill's doghouse. And look, say what you want to about, Bill even having a doghouse. Bill's going to be Bill. Have you not noticed that over the last 22 years before this one, that this is the way he operates? He's attempting in his own somewhat semi-antiquated way, he's attempting to force accountability on individuals. This is his way of doing it. Now, you can argue whether it's right or wrong, but at least he's trying. He's trying to get these guys to hold themselves accountable. And I bemoaned that at the start of the show. I said two things. This team is undisciplined, and this team has no accountability. Bill's trying to fix that. And I'm not a Bill apologist. I never have been. We could be critical here of the coach, just like anybody else could be critical of the coach. I'm just merely pointing out this is what he's doing. If you don't see it, this is what he's doing. He's trying to hold them accountable. And as far as Pop Douglas is concerned, it may have worked. Now, does that mean he's never going to fumble again? No. It's a violent sport. It's a physical sport. It happens. But he's aware of it, and that's the point. Sometimes players just react, and they just and they don't think about it. And ball security has to be a part of the reaction. And so you have to put that little bug in their heads so they don't hold the ball out like, as a coach once described to me, a loaf of bread. When you take the loaf of bread off of the shelf at the grocery store and you just kind of grab at it and you just hold it loosely and then you toss it into your basket or whatever. That's how some of these guys treat the football, and that's what you don't want them to do. Right? And that's when guys usually lose it, or when somebody comes in from behind and they see that football extended out from, the body, and they will punch at it. And guess what? Shame on you if you're a DB or a linebacker and you're making a play and you don't punch at the ball if you see the ball swing out. That's also part of personal accountability. And a lot of guys just don't think that. But, yeah, Pop Douglas, he's an obvious one. He's an obvious one. Pop obviously being his nickname, Demario Douglas, whatever you want to call him. But, he's been a bright spot. I feel like he's the one guy on this team that can make a big play, if not a positive play, every time he touches the ball. And the Patriots, frankly, need more than just him to do that. They don't have that guy. They need another receiver. They need maybe, a tight end that can do that. They need a running back that can do that. We saw that from Ramondre for the first time all year with a career-long run against Washington this past weekend. 64 yards. That's what I expected to see. We expect him to, hit the crease and boom, go. Let's pull a guard and get behind somebody and open a hole. That's the first time we've seen that happen this year. And we did see that Stevenson has still, a little bit of life left in the legs where he can hit that hole hard and go the distance. And he did that. We need to see more than that. And we need to see more people have that capability. So there are a lot of things there that you need. I think Douglas brings some of that to the table. I would definitely put him in a bright spot. And I definitely put him in that category. Is there anything else out there? Anything at all? Actually, Richard writes back and he says, Mr. Rook, I'm sorry. Wow, Mr. Rook. Now it's Mr. Rook. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. Mr. Rook is my father. Sorry, didn't mean for it to come off like that. I'm a year-round loyal listener to the Playbook. I appreciate you, Richard. I'm just having fun with you. I do have a question. When I watch the Patriots, it looks like they're running through water. Is that just a lack of speed, or do you think the team has given up? It's a fair question. It's a lack of speed. They're faster than they were a year ago. They're quicker than they were, I think, a year ago, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But they're still not fast enough, and especially when you compare them to a team like Miami. That's an issue. That's a real issue. Miami is I've said this several times already this year. Miami is the fastest team I've seen maybe ever with the speed that they have. And yet Miami lost again last week. They lost to Kansas City when they were playing, in Germany. And they're 6-3. And yet they still lead the division. Buffalo is flip-flopping a little bit as well and got some issues. They're 5-4. I mean, my God, the division was right there for the taking this year. I mean, in all reality, you look at the Patriots record, they're 2-7. I feel like that they probably should be 4-5. I think if things had turned out closer to the way most everybody expected this season to turn out, considering the schedule and some of the injuries and all that they've had, I feel like this team should probably be about where the Colts are, and that's 4-5. And if they were 4-5, you'd be 2 games out of first place with 8 still to play. And to me, I'm like, wow, that's okay. So you're competitive. It's right there for the taking. And wow. So I don't want to say that they're not that far off because I still think they are far off. But I'm just saying that's the environment, that's the universe in which you operate today. And so, you got to know how your opponents are built and where you can, hopefully attack them in a future time. And they still need to be faster. They still need to be quicker. And they still need to be more explosive on offense. And I think that's pretty easy to see. Eldred in North Carolina. Hey, Eldred, how we doing?
Fine there, Mr. Legend. How you doing today?
I'm okay. Claire wanted me to tell you that she wanted to make sure that you knew to download her podcast because you're being talked about in the podcast.
Uh-oh, bad or good?
No, it's all good. It's all good, brother.
Mm-hmm. Okay, download the podcast?
Yeah, so it's called A Claire Perspective.
Claire Perspective.
Claire Perspective.
Okay, sir, I can do that.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir. But,
she knew that you would. She knew that you would call into the show. And she says, "Will you please tell Eldred that since we're talking about him, that he needs to download the podcast and tell me, what he thinks." So there you go. There's your invitation.
I'd be glad to.
All right, there you go.
To.
There you go.
Yeah, I'd be glad to talk to Claire. I like hearing it on the show sometimes too. When I do get to hear,
right?
Talk.
Right.
Yes,
right.
sir.
Totally. All right. So what's on your mind, brother?
What's on my mind
Yeah.
is this year and next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like everybody else because everybody keeps saying they want Bill gone because it's his way of doing things. And like they said on that post game show,
mm-hmm.
and we just like I told him, it's the talent. Bill let go of the wrong people and hangs on to the wrong people, And like I told him before, it's always people there that we need and we don't get. And he don't want to pay most of those guys. He think he can do it this way and that way, but the roster building, we wouldn't have all them in the hole if he just hit one of those for the last 4 drives.
You're right. You're 100% right. I got to give you credit for that. You're right.
Right there.
You're right, but I would tell you that I'm not sure that's going to be a problem this year because I can't imagine the Crafts will allow status quo to remain status quo because of the problems they've experienced this year. Some things have to change, and because the salary cap is going to increase, there will be some money spent this year. It has to happen.
Yes, I understand that, but see, just like before, you go overpaid to aging wide receivers who ain't doing that much for you now.
Mm-hmm.
You done paid them. You could have got D-Hop, And I don't care if Parker got mad. He ain't did nothing in 3 years for nobody. You see what D-Hop doing for Tennessee?
I understand that. I think they made a mistake. That is a mistake. Yeah.
Miss that. They ain't the only one, though.
Yeah.
In the draft-wise.
Yeah.
But everybody, I'm with you, Mr. Legend. I don't want nothing to do with Caleb Williams. Nothing. Drake May, he's pretty good. But I can't
tell me about Drake May. You see him play because you're in North Carolina. What about him?
He does pretty good, but competition-wise, he plays out a little bit. Like with my team, I'm a Florida State guy.
Yeah.
When we played them, that defense got to him, and Jordan Travis had a darn good day against their defense. And I keep bringing that up with Evans. He's going to be a second-round draft. I can't see how they're undefeated. They fighting for a playoff and might even be in the championship.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they're doing good. He's been there 4 years, going on 5. He's been starting. He's mobile. He got a strong arm, and he also a pocket passer. And he's accurate, way accurate than Matt. And no matter, I know it's college to pros. You can't, but they got people coming at him too. He can scramble, set his feet, and got a strong A arm. And he's 6'4".
Yeah.
And like I said before, he's no beanpole. But I would love to have Marvin Harrison. But you think the Marvin Harrison senior would tell him, "No, we ain't going to the Patriots"?
Yeah, I mean,
for all bad memories.
I understood. I just don't know. I mean, first of all, I think he's got a shot at being one of the top picks, if not the top pick in the draft. And I don't know that the Patriots are going to be that bad.
No, he will be.
Yeah,
he's a generation player, and like I told them before, I'll shoot the moon just go get him. Even though Matt still be there, but I will get him if I have a second round draft pick, and if Jordan Travis is there, I'll grab him next. Because that's the guy going to replace Matt.
Okay.
And if you don't replace Matt, he's a better backup than Zappy.
Yeah.
And I remember beginning of the year, I said, let's trade Matt and move up, get C.J. Stroud. And everybody said, Eldridge, they ain't going to never happen. We won't do that. Stroud got the same offense we got, and he put up 400 some yards, 4 touchdowns every game. He looked like crap during preseason, but I knew that boy was accurate and could move and in the pocket too. And he's a competitor.
All right.
Now,
maybe, but, the man just had one good week. Let's see him put a couple together, and let's see what happens.
He had more than one good week. Come on now. He don't have more than one good week, sir.
Yeah.
You compare his stats to Matt.
Okay.
From day one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which one you rather have?
I understand completely. He's got mobility for one. So, I mean, that
he got better weapons except for Tank Dell. Tank Dell is another Pop Douglas. Now the guys on the outside coming on a little bit better. But he put up 470 yards, 5 touchdowns. Last game, he put up 300-some yards and 3 touchdowns the other game. Just look at his stats from game 1 to now. From game 1, and then put max stats to it. But then again, like I said, that's me.
No, but that's fair.
That's me.
That's fair. Okay.
That's me.
So, all right.
Because he's broken.
Let me ask you then the question of the day here. Find me one positive out of this mess that we've watched this year thus far.
One positive?
Yep.
I'm like everybody else. Pop Douglas and Gonzalez. That was my dream pick.
Yep.
And that crazy GM we got, you cut 6'3" corner that runs a 4.3 speed, and the Colts got him. Then you go get another one that's 6'1", runs a 4.6 40. You see the difference? Like I said in the beginning, I'd have put him, Bolden, and Gonzalez out there, and that's going to be my starting corners. And I was just waiting. You could have some problems, but they got the speed and the height to run with them guys. Bryant, Jones, and that confound the other guy, they can't cover a common cold with a handkerchief. So, I wouldn't. Now they're the secondary again, sir. Not secondary.
Secondary. Can't cover a cold with a handkerchief. I like that.
With a handkerchief.
I like that. I'm going to steal that, Eldred.
No, you can.
Thank you.
Remember, I was saying that years ago when we really sucked.
You're right. But I'll give you full credit for it. All right.
Yes, sir. And like I said, one thing you can't coach is speed and height. No matter what. I don't care if you got a 5'9" guy running a 4.2. He ain't gonna jump that 6'2", 6'3" guy. I don't care, especially the quarterback, accurate, a little accurate. And I would never thought that Sam Howell. I saw him in North Carolina too, but when he came out there and played, I was impressed.
Yeah. Listen, the guy's he's got moxie. I'll give him that, right?
Yeah, he does.
He's got it.
Get back up, throw it again.
Yeah, and I'd like the fact that he's been pummeled so badly this year because the Commanders have had a hard time with their offensive line. Guy's been sacked 41 times, and that was a little bit of a disappointment last week in the loss because I know the Patriots had 3 QB sacks, or technically, but it didn't really seem like they put enough pressure on the guy. And man, he's like the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps going. That's one tough customer.
Exactly. And that boy got an arm. I knew he had an arm, but I didn't think it was that strong and that good.
Yeah.
And then like I said, he got playmakers too.
Yep.
and Terry McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin is definitely one of them.
Yeah, and we worked him out. Then, Bill let him go. Dotson came through.
Why do they, in your estimation, why do they have such a hard time making a call on wide receivers?
No, sir. I'm going to be honest with you. Bill ain't no dummy. Bill, he reads the report. He sees the scouting report. He see how good these guys. He sees this thing. He know at the end of the contract, them guys are going to want their money.
Yeah.
He don't want to pay.
He don't want to pay it.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And he go get, a guy in draft round 1.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy in round 6 just as good. That is the reason why you're a first-round draft pick. It's the reason why you're 6. Sometimes those 6 guys work out because they got problems or they got that chip on their shoulder. They won't show everybody you passed them.
Mm-hmm.
But not all of them like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of those first round, it's going to take them a couple of years to get back up to that. Then they show out like Dotson. It took Dotson 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I give him another year. Him and McLaurin gonna be trouble.
Yeah.
And then Sam back there, they can be a good offense.
Yeah.
That's why they sticking with him, and Jacoby ain't got in there yet, and Jacoby's teaching them. So I hate that, but he went in the 5th round. We passed him 4 times.
Yeah. That's true. Hey, you know what? The pressing question is right now in my mind, what are you doing for brunch with the Patriots on Sunday morning since they kick off at 9:30?
Well, I'm going to have me some hangover pills and some headache pills.
Well, you could solve that all in one fell swoop with a Bloody Mary, right?
Yes, sir, that too.
Okay.
But see, my family, like my brother-in-law, he's a Colts fan, and I used to rag him all the time with that butt.
Ooh.
So
yeah.
now he said, man, your boys is just like what you said my team was.
Yeah.
A tune-up for my team to get better for the next team.
Yeah.
And that's how everybody talking about me now.
Okay.
Y'all tune-up guys now. Ain't nobody fear y'all now.
Well,
and it ain't because of Bill, because of Brady. And they make sure they say that.
Yeah, of course. Well, let them take their shots. Let them take their shots. That's all. It's they haven't had a chance to take their shots at you, so let them have it because it won't be long. That they'll be able to do that.
Yes, sir. I hope not. but where it's going now? No.
Have a little faith.
Good talk to you.
Right. Have a little faith, brother. Be safe out there.
Yes, sir. You too.
You got it. All right. Our buddy Eldred in North Carolina. Get out of his way, whatever you do.
A real woman could stop you from drinking.
You have to be a real big woman.
It's time to go around the NFL with football guru Russell Baxter
Now on, your name is Flounder.
on Patriots Playbook.
Flounder?
Mr. Baxter, thanks for hanging in there, brother, with us. How are you today?
Well, I was kidding Faith. When Eldridge was on, I was hoping to get on by 5 or 4.
I know. Sorry.
I love you, Eldridge. That wasn't, take it for what it's worth.
Yeah,
So.
right. Totally. It's just, and you and I have talked about this before, Russell, but I mean, this is just a different territory in which we are treading right now. And I know it was interesting because I saw you tweeted at me earlier today with an interesting piece that was out there about, Bill Belichick's overall career. And I think that some perspective, which is what we really try to provide on this show, we try to provide perspective, so I appreciate your including me in the thought process of what the bigger picture really looks like. It's just that nobody's experienced this part of the picture for a while. It's kind of like, I liken it to having, back before cable TV was prevalent in this country, I liken it to having rabbit ears on the television set, right? And you're trying to move it back and forth, and you're trying to twist it and turn it until the picture starts to get a little clearer, and then you yell at the kids, wait, right there, hold it, it's good. Now stand there for the next 6 hours. And that's kind of where we are with the Patriots. We're moving things back and forth, and we're just not getting a clear picture.
Yeah, there's almost a sense of, I don't want to say denial, but more disbelief of what is happening. And a loss like last week at home against a Washington team that had given up at least 33 points in 5 of its first 8 games, they had 2 big plays, and that was it.
Yeah.
And that had to be very, very disheartening. Meanwhile, Washington moved the ball. They didn't. Sam Howell is taking a licking and keeps on ticking.
Yep.
And he had another big game. The receiving core I think, is somewhat unsung with Terry McLaurin and John Dotson and so on. But, I mean, I think that was a chance. You know, the AFC East all took it on the chin this week.
Yeah.
They all lost. And it was weird this week because there were actually two divisions. The NFC West, every team lost.
Yep.
Except for San Francisco because they didn't play.
Mm-hmm.
But they're riding a 3-game losing streak. Meanwhile, every team in the AFC North won. Denver didn't play, and the rest of it was hit or miss in terms of divisions. But I know the Patriots have to be kicking themselves a little. The Jets certainly have to be kicking themselves after what happened on Monday. But New England is, you ask Eldridge, what's the saving grace so far to take to this? It's unfortunate you got to hang on the win over Buffalo, but that's really kind of it. I mean, the Patriots haven't beaten a team outside the division.
I know, and that's disconcerting for whatever reason. I think we knew that the schedule was difficult going in. And it's proven, yes, to be difficult. I think that there was expectation, though, that the Patriots would have at least enough overt talent to be able to be competitive, if not win one or two of those. And I said this a little bit earlier before you joined us. I said, look, I'll take a good, honest look at the 9 games New England has played thus far. And I'm going to tell you that when you look at it and put win, loss, play that game with it, this team should probably be about 4-5. And they're only 2 games back of that. And then, although that's a mile and a half, between, here and there. And when you consider that Miami stumbled this last week, as you said, everybody else in the AFC East lost this week, that's why this team should be kicking themselves, because they could conceivably be just 2 games out of first place if they had just done what we sort of semi-expected them to do in the first place.
Right. I mean, we haven't seen, and listen, and let's be honest, it's still, most teams, by the end of this week, every team will have played at least 9 games, and some teams will have played 10. And that's why, shameless plug, my power rankings that come out on Tuesday will not only include rankings, but a mid-season grade for all the 32 teams.
Excellent.
I'm gonna do my best with the bet. We'll see what happens over in Germany this week.
Do you have
there's been too many times this year where the Patriots, and earlier, listen, they lost tough games to start out the season.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But 34-0 at home to the Saints. I don't think that they haven't beaten an NFC team. That used to be automatic for them.
Yeah, it used to be.
So that's
sure did.
been a struggle for the last couple of years. So it's very, very. Now, that being said, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little because I had a young man who took issue with the fact that, and I will say to you, the idea that you want your team to lose is moronic.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
And I don't care. You can take that for what it's worth. But, listen, if a team loses, they lose. Okay? The idea that you almost want your team to lose on purpose blows my mind. And, if this young man, insisted, we get better draft position. Well, what's been the Patriots' problem the last few years? Drafting.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. How many years did the Browns have the first overall pick and botched it?
Didn't seem to help them any. And by the way, I would say that anybody who says, they should tank, okay, that shame on the Houston Rockets for doing that, but it's a lot easier to tank when you have 12 players on a roster as opposed to 53, because there's not that many players that you have to manage. But if you are a true professional, it is against your very being to throw in the towel. Everybody wants to compete. Nobody likes to get their butts whipped.
Right. Well, as I cited to this young man, I've worked with players. I've worked with coaches. I've worked with GMs. I've worked with scouts. I've been very fortunate to do what I've done for the last, it seems like 150 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard one of them. And I've asked them. They give you a look like lose on purpose. They give you a look like, are you out of your you-know-what mind?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. If you're a player who's willing to do that, what good is it going to do for a team to sign you if you have that type of attitude? Yeah. How many times have we seen players benched because they're not trying? It happened.
Well, yeah. In fact, I mean, you could make an argument that could be part of the reason, at least, that you got J.C. Jackson, who allegedly is not going to make the trip to Germany this week, and Jack Jones didn't start last week because of an alleged missed curfew. Is that what we're understanding could be the case? But it could also be just because of their attitude and their lackadaisical play.
That's exactly right, and that doesn't garner you many points in free agency if your contract has expired. But here's an example of something that I thought about a couple of days ago, and I think you'll enjoy this. And the Houston Texans got a lot of criticism last year for winning their final game of the year. How many people in our profession and the fans said, "Oh my God, they screwed up the number one pick"?
Yeah, everybody said that. Yeah.
Well, so guess what? They wound up with number 2. Well,
seemed to work out okay.
Yeah. It's called integrity.
Yeah.
It's called let the cards fall where they may.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't want to lose on purpose, and you don't want to lose. But if you're not that good, you are going to lose. And there's countless examples of teams that, quote-unquote, were out of it that have knocked teams out of the playoffs the last 2 weeks. And, the idea that somebody who has nothing to do with football other than being a fan and an angry fan wants professional players and coaches to compromise their integrity is, let me think of the word, moronic.
I would tell you that like I said, that person that asked for that has never played a team sport before.
Right.
Seriously.
Well, I mean,
I don't think they have. Never been on a team before.
It is a team sport. That was the other thing I heard. It's not the Patriot way. It's the Tom Brady way. Well, who the hell made Tom Brady into Tom Brady?
Of course, we know this. You and I know this, but you're right. A lot of people don't see that because they have to think.
Right.
They have to think.
They have to do homework.
Yeah. Right.
They have to go back and think. And to his credit, Eric Mangini, who appears on some of the Fox shows, we won't name them. He has banged the drum about one of our favorite topics, and that's the 2001 season, in which the Patriots scored 3 offensive touchdowns and 3 defensive touchdowns in 3 playoff games, and one of those offensive touchdowns had nothing to do with Tom Brady, although he started the game. Okay? So, I mean, by the way, starting quarterback record. You know who started for the Vikings last week? Jaron Hall. You know who was named NFC Offensive Player of the Week? Josh Dobbs. There's your starting quarterback record, too.
Yeah.
Watch the games. It's not that hard. But the idea that you want I'll get off the soapbox now. Only losers want a team to lose.
Yeah, I would have to say that that's probably accurate. Everybody wants to compete and win.
Come on, let's go, man.
Yeah, so. I agree. No, I'm with you on that one. All right, so let's at least let's take a look at a couple of other games before we get back to the Colts and Patriots that will provide us with brunch time entertainment on Sunday. I have to admit that I look at a couple of games with some mixed emotion. Saints Vikings are both 5-4. I'm looking at the Jaguars, a pleasant surprise. They get their test, and they get to be at home against the 49ers. I think that'll be interesting to see, whether or not the Jags are really for real. I think the 49ers can still provide that test for them. I'm anxious to see what the Browns can do at the Ravens because I want to see if Cleveland is legit. And then I want to see the Lions bounce back and they play at the Chargers this week. What do you think?
Oh, well, I think you nailed, the 2 best games. And I think the game that's kind of going under the radar is Cleveland and Baltimore. Here's my favorite stat from last week, might be my favorite stat of the year. The Browns limited the Cardinals last week to 58 total yards.
Wow.
Man. In the first quarter, Deshaun Watson threw a 59-yard pass to Amari Cooper.
Wow. Yeah.
That Browns defense is for real, and I give a lot of credit to they went out and bolstered the line, but more importantly, they've got one hell of a coordinator. Wasn't a great head coach, but Jim Schwartz knows something about defensive line play. We saw it in Tennessee. We saw him get a Super Bowl ring with the Eagles. That front 4, Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, Darius Smith, and by the way, Myles Garrett. That's That's some nasty stuff. When you can rush the passer with 4 guys, that's a luxury.
Yep. It's also something I think that the Lions have been able to do, and yet they kind of got their comeuppance, a week ago, and so they get a chance now to see if they can't, recharge themselves against a Los Angeles team that's been hit or miss all season long.
Well, when the Lions lost a couple weeks ago to Baltimore, it was, and then the last time we saw them, I believe, is when they played the Raiders,
right,
on Monday night. But how's this for a number? The Lions have given up 90 points in 6 wins and 75 points in 2 losses.
There you go.
Okay, so remember they got tagged for 37 by the Seahawks.
Yep.
In overtime in week 2, just after they had come off of they had a week and a half to get ready for Seattle. Remember they beat Kansas City in week 1, which was like your classic letdown game.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting week. It's once again a week where we don't have a ton of divisional games. They're coming late in the season, and there's a lot of these races are very, very tight. Even Dallas. I mean, who's really pulled away? You can't even say necessarily the Chiefs have pulled away.
Nope.
That divisional loss to Denver is going to hang in there for a little bit, and it's also a week. Think about this. No Patrick Mahomes, no Tyreek Hill, and no A.J. Brown.
Wow. Yeah.
They're all off this week.
Yep, that's right. What are we going to do? What are we going to do for offensive excitement?
Oh yeah, and 2 guys who were, Hill and Brown certainly in the mix for Offensive Player of the Year, not MVP. In fact, why not MVP? Who is really opening eyes in terms of quarterback play? Because I know it's been a quarterback award. We haven't seen anybody since Adrian Peterson in 2012 win it other than the quarterback. There is no quarterback, who's thrown for 25 this and 2 interceptions. But it's funny? Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are having a dynamite year. Offensively, they've been almost unstoppable. This might stun you. Lamar Jackson has 9 touchdown passes and 9 turnovers.
Wow. See? And even though for all of his talent, there's still the penchant for, making the mistake. But I was just going to say Lamar Jackson right now might be the candidate that deserves to be at the top of the list.
I think it's a salad bar as far as I'm concerned. I got to get a food reference then.
Right.
A lot of ingredients out there. And nobody is like, nobody is just like, wow. Not like an Aaron Rodgers a couple of years ago, or Dan Marino in '84 when he just listened the entire football world and so on. There's nobody that jumps out right now.
Could you make it?
Like I said, Hill and Brown. Tyreek Hill got the 1,000-yard receiving.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. Could you make a case for Tyreek Hill because you literally have to change your game plan thinking and account for him when the Dolphins are playing and playing well?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. He had last year in his first year with Miami, John, he set career highs in targets, catches, and yards.
Yep.
This year he is, and he did have 100-yard receiving last week in the loss to the Chiefs. But he's already had more touchdown receptions than he did all of last season. So, like I said, I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago. Could he get to 1,000 in 8 games? Which reminded me of one of the great wide receiver feats of all time. Wes Chandler during the 1982 strike season played 8 games and finished with 1,032 yards receiving, and he averaged 21.1 yards per catch.
Wow, that's some yak. That's some yak.
That's some real yak.
Yep.
And yet somehow the Chargers fell apart in the playoffs because they couldn't play defense in the early 80s. So.
Yeah, correct. Then quick thought then on the Niners and Jaguars and the test that is liable to be there for Jacksonville and the 49ers have stumbled. Okay, let's admit it. They've stumbled a little bit of the last couple of weeks. So what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, Jacksonville finds a way to win. They are tied with the Saints for the most takeaways in the league, and they've done it in one fewer game. They have 18 takeaways. They had 27 last year. By the way, the year before Doug Peterson got to Jacksonville and his staff, the Jaguars had 9 takeaways all of one season.
Yeah, see, that's such a game changer. When the Patriots were really good defensively, why were they good? Because they took the ball from the other guy.
Yeah. Well, I remember talking about this when I was still at ESPN. The year that they won that first Super Bowl, they were 24th, I believe, in total defense in terms of yards allowed.
Mm-hmm.
They were 6th in points.
Yeah, because they were taking the ball.
Yeah, and what did their defense and special teams do? You had Ty Law with the pick six.
Yeah.
Troy Brown with the punt return.
Yep.
They had the blocked field goal against Pittsburgh as well.
Yep.
There's a lot of different ways to win in this league. We've seen Pittsburgh do that a couple of times. You know, their offense got 1 touchdown against the Browns. Their defense got 2.
Yeah. Well, invariably.
And by the way, the Colts last week.
Yeah.
Couldn't move the ball against Carolina.
And they got 2 pick sixes.
2 touchdown passes to Kenny Moore II.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, Kenny Moore II is a member of the Indianapolis Colts the first.
Right. That's a good one. I like that. But that's I was just kind of, heading that direction. That's right. They got 2 pick sixes, and they end up getting a big win over Carolina. That gives them a little momentum, and it leads us right into, a 9:30 Eastern time kickoff Sunday morning as the Patriots and the Colts do the thing in Frankfurt. And look, I know why, the Patriots, and why the NFL wants success in Frankfurt, and certainly those that are listening to this program, whether live or on a podcast, can understand. Look, it's popular, and the NFL wants to continue to brand the sport worldwide. The Patriots, have a quote unquote, market hold on the German area, and so in Germany in particular. So I just don't know what the German fans are going to really see out of this New England edition, other than a lot of disappointment, because this team has fallen short on just about every level thus far. They've had a hard time, holding themselves accountable. They've had a hard time with, discipline in key situations, and I think it really cost them, as we've suggested already on this show this past week against Washington. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to see a snap of the fingers and things change automatically for the better. I think, if you could just see some progress, that might be a start, but is it enough to win you a football game? I really don't know the answer to that.
And neither do I. And it's really sad because, at least in my mind, Matt Judon is their best player on the roster, and he's not around.
Right.
And Christian Gonzalez, well, he made a good impression very, very early. I'm not going to say he's the second best player on the team, but, who knows? When you're having a bad offensive year, and you lose that kind of talent on the defensive side of the ball, playmaking defensive talent, you don't really have a lot to hang your hat on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been the thing with the Patriots. We have seen them have bad stretches. But there have just been too many games this year where they have been unresponsive, for lack of a better word.
Right.
And that's not something, and I think that's the disheartening part. Blowout loss to the Saints, blowout loss to the Cowboys. And again, a golden opportunity last week against an interconference foe who wasn't playing very good defense, and yet somehow, the Washington Redskins, they look like they had Dexter Manley on the field.
Yeah. That's true. That's very true. All right, brother. Well, we'll try to wrap it up again. I will tell you just a little programming note that we will not do a playbook next week. Not necessarily because it's the bye week, but because I have to travel. So I have a little basketball travel, and look, I'll say this because I feel like rubbing it in everybody's face. I'll be going to the Bahamas this time next week. Look at Faith is just absolutely giving me a eat, bleep, and die look.
No faith.
I know. Hey, look, that's where they're paying me to go. If the Patriots had paid for me to go to Germany, I'd be there too.
Hey, here's what I know. I didn't put the Pro Bowl in Hawaii. Don't blame me.
Right.
Okay?
That's exactly how I look at it. That's exactly how I look at it.
You're like, oh my God, who's complaining about going to Hawaii? I never did.
No.
Okay?
No, sir.
So,
no, sir.
I always looked at, I could talk about football in Connecticut, or I can talk about football in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Okay?
We'll try Hawaii. Let's try Hawaii. Let's see how that goes, right? Thank you, brother, as always. So we will talk to you in 2 weeks then, if that'll work with you.
Oh, by the way, here's my biggest bet of the week.
Okay.
Bet the over on Heidi references during the Jets-Raiders Sunday night game.
Yeah, no kidding. Complete with Lederhosen and German beer steins and polka music.
Right. Well, very true. And I'll steal from The Godfather. Try the strudel. It's the best in the city.
I love it. All right, brother. Talk to you soon.
You got it.
Thank you. Russell Baxter at Bax Football Guru on X. I'm going to go with a couple of quick final notes here before we wrap up. Vinny on Twitter /X, whatever, in response to what Russell and I were talking about earlier today, he sent me a story from his fansided.com piece on ranking the New England Patriots' 6 Super Bowl wins and talking about better times in general. And so Vinny had a response to that. He said, I find it weird in the media that many in the media are now claiming Bill isn't a good coach. I'm not talking about the article, but just in general. And that does seem, Vinny, to be an overwhelming thought process here. And I think it's because it's such a shocking turn of events for a team, for a franchise, for a coach whose reputation has been nothing but superlative. And if the people who say it was all Tom Brady and not Bill, comparing Tom and Bill, which is the inevitable, comparison, and those that are, taking it to the bank and saying, see, told you so, and that kind of thing. And I don't think a lot of the media have jumped along. And the reason they're jumping in on this is because it's just out of character. And, there's got to be a logical explanation for the illogical occurrence. And I think that's why they've said, well, maybe Bill's having a hard time coaching. And I also think, there was a response to that from Alan who says, I wonder how much of it they believe what they're saying, or is it more of the hot take debate stuff that seems to be the priority now for most media? Bingo, Alan. Bingo. You got bingo. I got bingo. That was Troy Brown's commercial, right? Yeah, I think everybody's trying to get the hot take. And I just, sometimes the hot take just isn't there. The final word of the day belongs to John, who emailed, recently we've seen players not taking responsibility for their drops or passive-aggressively blaming others while saying, I got to do better. But am I the only one who sees an increase in Bill's sideline histrionics over referee calls? I know that part of it is working the refs. Or coaches like Pellegrino, who I like, blaming the narrative and not the players? Remember when the Patriots had one message and everybody was pulling together? It all seems like a distant memory. Says John, formerly of Hull and Quincy, but now traveling Europe full-time. Enjoy Germany. Thank you, John. Thanks for taking the time. I hope you get there for the game. There's something to that. Yeah, there's something to that. Yeah, I think in Bill's instance, he is working the refs because I think there has been an officiating issue in the NFL, not just the Patriots. The Patriots haven't lost a game because of the officials, but there have been a lot of inconsistencies. I mean, the call that benefited the Patriots last week, the roughing the quarterback call, that was just like, it was embarrassingly bad. I mean, I don't know what roughing the quarterback is anymore. Embarrassingly bad. So, I mean, I don't necessarily blame Bill for that. I think that the not taking responsibility, I think they're trying, at least in Mac's case, as you pointed out, John, but it sounds insincere. I'm one of those that needs to see proof in the pudding by your actions, not your words. I keep getting reminded that all the time, especially at home. I need to see you do it. Saying it is one thing. I need to see you do it, and that's where we are. We need to see this team start to do it. Perhaps it starts this week in Frankfurt. Our thanks to Zach Cox from Nesson, Mike Atkins from the Indianapolis Star for joining us, Russell Baxter for joining us. And, hey, thanks to you for hanging in there. And so we'll do this again. Actually, we won't next week because, as I mentioned to Russell, we're going to take the week off for travel next week, and since next week is a bye week anyway, so we won't be here next Wednesday with a live playbook, but we'll be back 2 weeks from today for a pre-Thanksgiving edition, as the Patriots will play the Giants that weekend, of course, on Thanksgiving weekend. So we'll be back 2 weeks from today, that same Pat's time and that same Pat's channel, right here on Patriots.com radio. Thank you, Faith. Appreciate you. All right, we'll talk then, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.